In this video, I'm going to go over my expense report template. And how it works is the employees will enter their expenses, enter all their required fields, save it, send it to their manager. The manager can click this manager review button, and it'll flag any items that are over the limit or that need to be looked at. Manager comments on it, sends it to accounting. Accounting can generate a journal entry. And so first things first, I'll go over the actual line items in here. And so each line you can select a different branch. So in this case I've got 5 branches set up, but you can also just use the one and not worry about that side of it. Enter description, a vendor name, the number of attendees, if say it was a meal, if there was a customer taken out, whether the receipt is attached or not attached to your expense report. And then here are the categories. So here I've set aside 5 main categories, which can be changed to whatever else. Maybe you're not a traveler, but you have a lot of recruitment fees or a lot of maintenance or whatever. These can be changed for your 5 most commonly used expenses. And the goal being that should cover most of your items and easily total them up at the bottom here. But for the one-off ones that are a bit unusual, you can put the amount relating to the other section here, and then select a category that's not in one of those 5. And if by accident you enter a category here and also put an amount here, it's going to flag that before you're able to save the file to tell you that you need to correct that. Further to the right, you have a tip amount, a tax amount, and a total expense amount that gets automatically tallied up. And if I go to the setup tab now, this is where the bulk of the administration goes on, because here you can set up your categories, the GL codes they relate to, and then what limit you want them to start flagging expenses. And I have a per attendee section here, and if I mark it as an X, it'll do 2 things. One, it'll force that on this any meal, in this case it's meals and travel meals that I put an X on. So anywhere where I've selected meals or travel meals, I will have to put an attendee number. And second, what it's going to do is this limit of $50, it's going to be multiplied by the number of attendees. So that means it's a per attendee limit. So $50, it's going to be times 1 attendee. Because obviously if you take out a large number of people, the meal cost is going to go up. So if you just set a flat meal cost of $50, that's the limit. Obviously, if you take 5 or 6 people, that limit's going to be useless because it's going to change. And so this reflects that. And so now, if I were to change these attendees to 10, the limit for this line item is going to be 10 times 50, or $500. And because we're not at $500, this one would not get flagged if it was 10 attendees. But at 1 attendee, the limit's only going to be $50, and it will be flagged. So that's the purpose of that. It allows you to set up variable items. And in theory, it doesn't necessarily have to be an attendee. That's just what this is called. If there was some other metric where it was per unit or per item that you wanted to track, it's a similar type of thing. You could put an X in here in one of these items, and then have the person enter in a quantity, and it will work the same way. And so that's one of the things that's going to flag before an employee can save it is, if they entered a meals amount and you specify that's going to be per attendee, then the employee has to enter in something into this field here. Similarly, they're going to have to specify whether the receipt is attached or not attached. So if I were to try to save this file, it's going to be a message to say, enter the number of attendees, and it's going to highlight the line. So on this line, I'm going to enter attendees. So I'm going to say 2 attendees. Now if I go to save it again, it's going to give me a message saying I have to confirm if a receipt's been attached for this one. So I'm going to say it's been attached. And now I should be okay to hit the save button. And now it's saved this. So now the employee's done their part. They would send it off to the manager to review. And now if I go back to that setup section, as I mentioned, I've got all these limits. So if they go on a flight and they select air travel and put in $2,001, then it's going to flag that that expense item. It's going to flag anything that goes over this limit. It's going to flag if there's tipping over 20%. In my example here, I purposely set this tip amount at $6.01, which is just over 20% of this meals amount. So that one's going to get flagged for excessive tipping. As I mentioned, branches, you can specify the GL code, and what this is just the suffix. So this will be added on to whatever GL code the expense category relates to. So if it's air travel branch A, it's going to be 5,000-100. If you don't need a dash, you can get rid of it. If you don't use branches at all, you can just wipe this out completely, and it's just going to be 5,000. I've set up an accounting password. This is for just basically clicking that accounting button to make sure that it's password protected, to make sure only people who need to see that can enter that. So this can be changed. I've got an employee list and who's the approver. In most cases, I'd assume you'd probably only need one password or one approver. But the option's there if you wanted multiple approvers or not. But the idea being here is, you can customize the passwords per approver. But if not, you can also set them to approver A and just use the one password. But this is the password that's going to look for based on this approver on the data tab. And then lastly, I've got the GL accounts for the credit account and the tax account. The credit account being probably an expenses payable line, and the tax account as well. So the tax account, I assumed if there was a branch, you're going to attach the branch, whereas the credit account, it's probably going to be a fixed one. But so this is the only one where I think may require manual adjustment if it doesn't suit perfectly with your accounting rules. But obviously, it's going to be hard to have one size fits all for all accounting softwares, anyways. So going back to the data tab now, so the manager gets this, and I'm going to click Manager View. And before I do that, let's show you that it says Approver A. So the password is going to be AAA, and the employee name is going to be a drop down from the list of employees on the Setup tab. And so if you need to add additional employees or additional expense categories, because these are named ranges, best way is just to select somewhere inside the table, right click Insert, and shift cells down. And that way you can add another category, put in the limits, the GL, and it'll automatically be updated. If I were just to add it right here, it's not going to be in that range, and that's why I say insert in the middle of the table. And similar goes for employees or approvers or branches or anything else that needs to be added. So going back to the data tab, so the password is going to be AAA. So if I go to Manager View now, I'm going to type AAA, press Enter, and now it's going to generate a list of reviewable items. So it's going to pull these details from the data tab, and then it's going to tell me the reviewable reason. And so it's going to say for this number 1, it's going to say an excessive meal cost for the number of attendees. And I have a reference number here, number 1, so it's the first item. If I go to number 1, that's this one, and that's highlighted in yellow, saying, oh, $2.50. So because it's a meals item that I've specified that's per attendee, it's flagged it as saying per, having only one attendee, it's an excessive amount. This one has no receipt, and that is line 2, which I specified as not attached. And then the fourth item, the fourth line, was that excessive tipping amount, where I mentioned it was just over 20%, which is what I set up as the limit in the setup tab. And it flags that it is as excessive tipping. And now the last column here is for manager comments, because the idea being, this could be sent to the manager now, and the manager has to comment on these infractions and to show, well, I guess do one of two things. At the very least, make sure that he's looked at it, and then hopefully also put a comment on there to acknowledge or explain why that happened, or if he's going to do anything about it, because that way at least it forces a bit of a review onto the manager. And so obviously there's a fine line here between setting these limits, because if you set the limits too aggressively, there's going to be too many items flagged, and then it's going to be counterintuitive. But if these are set strategically that they're only extremely high amounts or things that are important or problems with, then as long as you get that fine line where it's not too many and it's not nothing, then at least it's being useful. Because obviously, if you have 50 items to review and only 52 lines in total, it kind of defeats the purpose. So that's where you can administer and change that as you need or based on your individual needs. And so on the data tab, it also highlights these infractions based on severity. So for branch or for line 1 here, they just went over the limits, so it's flagged as yellow as being the least severe. Orange on the case of line 4, this was for an excessive tip, so that is second most severe. Third most severe, which I would assume would be, is if there's not a receipt attached, and so that was highlighted red. So this is for the benefit of the accounting department getting this stuff, so at least they can see, okay, these are looking at it from most severe to least severe. It helps them focus to make sure that there's been some acknowledgement from the manager on these specific items. Because with a big expense report, there might be a lot of lines on here, so it might be difficult to tell if some of these comments are manager comments are left blank. So by highlighting it, it helps focus on those items for the accounting department who's processing to see, okay, has the manager addressed these issues, right? So it helps prioritize which ones are problematic and shows which ones are. It shows which ones aren't. So items 3 and 5 here are white, and they're not highlighted, so there's no issues with any of those. And so once everything is done from here, let's say the manager's made all his comments, accounting is all good with it, they can click this accounting button and generate the GL entry. So if I click on this, and the accounting password from the setup tab was 5678, hit enter. Now it's going to generate a GL entry based on the data entry. And so 86401 on the debits and a credit of 86401, and that is going to be the total on the expense reports. And should match up with the tax and other tipping totals. So 601 for the tip, tax was 38, and you can see those totals in there. Pulls a description based on the employee name and the month and year of the report. And again, this is the GL entry, and this is where it's adding the GL code for the expense and adding the branch. It was all branch A, and branch A I had listed as 100. So now if you were to add a branch onto the setup tab, then I would just suggest to add it onto here as well to make sure that it's included in this entry. And I think that's about it. So if you needed to, now I guess one last thing, to change to reset this highlighting, the easiest thing you can do is just highlight a line that doesn't have any highlighting. Click the format painter and select these columns up here, and now it'll reset back to what it was. And that is it, and that should take care of any sort of expenses that you want to monitor closely. Again, my suggestion would be just to make sure the limits are set high enough that they're needing to be reviewed, but not low enough that it's going to flag too many items and defeat its own purpose. So, yeah, let me know what you think. Any feedback, please let me know. Thank you.